Okay, so here's what happened to me. I was in a conversation on a call this week with a group of people, very, very bright women, and we were talking about various theological things. And the question came up of, well, how do we decide what the core of our faith is? Like, how do we know? You always hear this cliche. Um, well, it's okay if we disagree about that because it's not a salvation issue.
And I had never heard that before you told me.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, I hear that so much. It's okay. It's not a salvation issue. It doesn't matter. And I hear this a lot in conversations about the age of the earth.
I'm gonna have to step
Uh
my game up to be in more holy circles, I suppose. we just I don't know. I've never heard this.
women in ministry, should women be ordained or not? Well, it's okay. It's not a salvation issue. We can just agree to disagree.
Oh.
I had a conversation with a colleague this week at work, and we were discussing, whether or not the doctrine of hell, was an agree to disagree issue, or is that like a more classical core Christian doctrine? What about the Trinity? What do you have to believe in the Trinity to be a Christian? And I guess I just kind of had am I the only one? Like, go in the chat box, people. Am I the only one who's ever heard this saying that there's that's not a salvation issue? This is used as a criteria to decide whether or not it's okay to believe in something. And I've even heard progressives say this. Well, it's not gay marriage is not a salvation issue, so that can become in the category of an agree to disagree issue. And more conservative Christians will say, no, it's not an agree to disagree issue. That's a line in the sand. Like, we can't cross over that line. And so this is kind of what I'm hearing out there as I'm talking to people, and this saying keeps coming up. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, like you don't even know what I'm talking about. Is this not even really a segment?
I'm just.
Like, should I just go get some mac and cheese or something?
But if you do, can you bring me some? I was just trying to figure it out because I'm like, well, when do you decide not to let it run to the line of an argument? So can I just believe that this is true?
Just arbitrarily?
Well, no, like the doctrine of hell.
Uh-huh.
Can I believe that hell is real? It's a real place, and that one day people will go there and pain and suffering will exist there, and it's eternal separation from God. And you not like I'm wondering if people are saying like we'll just have to agree and disagree so that we can walk together,
Uh-huh.
or should we not walk together in fellowship because we don't agree on these things? I guess that was the question inside of my head.
Okay.
Like, do we not, just because we don't agree on these things, can we not walk together in fellowship?
Well, I think that sometimes it comes to that. Like, sometimes a church will have to decide, well, what are the things that we're going to have as agree to disagree issues? Because if you go and we did a whole show about churches, and we did a whole thing about looking at church doctrinal statements. But very seldom in a church doctrinal statement are they going to tease out, like, what's the official position of the church on the age of the earth?
Mm-hmm.
And is it 6,000 years old, or are we going to accept conventional scientific ages? Very seldom do you see right on the church website. Sometimes you do, but often not, about their view on women in ministry. Sometimes you have to kind of implicitly just look at the staff page and see what women are on staff and in what positions they are, and then you kind of know. But would we allow a woman to do a guest pulpit on a Sunday morning, or do we allow women to be elders, or like, what's the agree to disagree issue? Or could we have a board of male elders where some of the male elders think the earth is young and some think the earth is old? Like, would that be an acceptable way of coloring in the lines, or is that outside the lines? And what I often hear is, well, it's just not a salvation issue. Like, this is the primary criteria that's put forward as how do we decide what an agree to disagree issue is. And what I wanted to comment about it is that I don't think that's the right question. I don't think that that's actually very helpful to ask the question, well, is this an issue of salvation or not? Because Christianity is so much more than just getting saved. Christianity is a worldview. It's a network of beliefs. It's almost like evangelicals today want to take what I call like the minimal facts approach to Christianity. Like, well, what's the minimal thing that we need to believe or to think in order to be a Christian? And then we could just disagree on the rest. Well, that to me doesn't provide a helpful rubric for being unified. Because Christianity is so much more than that. It's more than just getting saved. It's more than just getting somebody converted and baptized. Like in the more ancient faith traditions, conversion takes time. Sometimes you have to go through conversion classes for a year or more, because historically the idea has been, we really want you to know what it means to be a Christian. That being a Christian involves believing in the Trinity, in the incarnation, in salvation, in holiness, walking this way, living this way. That Christianity isn't just simply, I asked Jesus in my heart and now I go to heaven. That's kind of this minimalistic approach to the faith. When you become a Christian, Christianity permeates your whole life. And it affects your decisions, it affects how you use money. It affects how you engage in friendships. It affects how you engage in family. It affects so many more things than just getting saved, getting into heaven. And so when I hear people talk about this, for me, what I'm seeing in a trend in a lot of churches is there's not a lot of what we used to call discipleship happening. And that's a lot of what Natasha's talking about earlier in the show, is this concept of teaching people what we believe and how to live as a Christian. It's not this minimal facts approach of, well, it's okay, we could just agree to disagree. It's not a salvation issue, so therefore we don't need to talk about it. No, there's a lot more to being a Christian than just getting saved and getting into heaven. So I think that we have kind of this poverty in our soul because we're so busy just trying to get people baptized and converted. We're not really teaching them what the church used to call catechizing them on what it really means to be a Christian. And, if you don't have the Trinity, you don't have Christianity.
Yeah.
If you don't have the incarnation, you don't have Christianity. The doctrine of hell and being separated from your creator for all of eternity has been part of the church from the beginning. We can't just wake up one day as Protestants and decide, you know what? I think that's an agree to disagree issue. Like, we're not in charge of that. That's not how that works. So, I don't know. I feel like nobody's catching the vision here of what I'm trying to do. That's okay. Monique's like, why are we talking about this? Why is this a segment?
No, I get it. I get that the foundation of Christianity are things that are not agree to disagree. Like, these were the things taught by the ancient church and should be held. I just wonder, at what point do you break fellowship with someone? Or at what point do you not engage in relationship with a non-believer? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I get that I can be firm in all of these things. And I may have a friend. Actually, I do have a friend who doesn't.
Okay, Natasha's glad we're talking about it. She sent a comment.
I do have a friend who doesn't believe in hell.
Okay.
Do I break fellowship with her because she doesn't believe in hell?
I see the question. I guess for me, what I would try to do with that person is make the case, being a situation like that would cause me to go back to scripture and really try to inform myself. And then going back to that person, since we're in a friendship relationship, to start asking questions. Well, what do you do about this verse?
Yes.
How do you handle this?
Yes.
and then beginning those conversations and engaging in a more rigorous defense rather than just saying, well, we don't have to talk about it. We'll just make an agree to disagree type
Well,
of thing.
we've had quite a few conversations on it, and that's why I'm wondering, well, at what point do I say, well, friend, sorry.
I don't know if it's worth like breaking fellowship with somebody. I mean, my brother is LDS. We have all manner of differences about doctrine.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I want to stay in relationship with my brother. I love him. And both of us are in this awkward space of trying to convert one another to our respective positions. But we've learned how to navigate that and stay in relationship with each other. I deeply love my brother. Like, after my husband, like the man that's closest to my heart is my brother.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. Like, he's so close to my heart. But we have deep and profound differences about our faith. And but we talk about them. And so I wouldn't break fellowship with somebody over a doctrinal difference, but I would certainly engage in a rigorous conversation to try to put forward the historic Christian position and to point out that their position is the unique and novel and Johnny come lately position. I am defending what Christians have always
Historically
believed.
believed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if I would break fellowship though over that. Now, if I'm in a church leadership position, I probably wouldn't put somebody in leadership who was a universalist and didn't believe in hell. But that's a different issue. I think that we can have a personal relationship with one another, but that's a different conversation than being in church leadership.
Well, I think that's a good distinction too, because where we are agreeing to disagree and how we're agreeing to disagree or disagreeing or agreeing is important. I think that all of that context is extremely important in looking at the relational aspects and looking at leading and yeah, like the life of a church.
So my friend Susanna, I love it that Susanna is chiming in tonight. She says, when dealing with interfaith or ecumenical events, there are things that we can band together to prevent evil in our world. If we are talking about salvation in the Christian worldview, it's totally different. Yes, Susanna, you are such a good student. Susanna was in my adult Sunday school class for a couple of years, and I love it that she's saying this because uh, it's important. Another distinction to make is like, what are the places where we can agree with one another, even across worldviews? Like, I'm not Catholic. I'm
Mhm.
deeply sympathetic to Catholics, um, but I can lock arms with a Catholic or a Mormon who is pro-life, and that's an issue that we can help advocate for in our culture of the sanctity of life. And there's even atheists who are pro-life.
Mhm.
Um, and I can find commonalities with all of those people because that particular value um, goes across our worldviews. So I don't have a problem with that. But when I'm talking about the distinctiveness of the Christian worldview, I'm going to make my case as to why I think that is true. But I think that often what I hear in the church is this trope of, well, it's not a salvation issue, so we don't need to talk about it, or we don't need to really get into it.
And when we in
And
reality we really
we
do.
do.
Yeah.
Like, the Trinity is not an agree to disagree issue. If somebody's running around with a faulty view of the Trinity, we need to have some conversations. We need to talk about that. If someone's denying the doctrine of hell, we need to have a conversation about that. That's not an agree to disagree issue. Now, our friend Annette was saying, what about things like eschatology? And I'm so glad you
Hmm.
brought that up. Like, and eschatology is doctrine of last things. So it's about the coming of Jesus and that sort of thing. Now, this gets into sort of the criteria for deciding what's most important. That, well, it's not a salvation issue. Okay, this is where that to me, that is profoundly not helpful, that criteria. Because I have Christians all the time try to tell me the things like the rapture, the mark of the beast, the 7 years tribulation are all essentials of the faith. Like, if I don't believe those, I'm some kind of second class Christian, Bible compromiser. It's like, yeah, but no Christian believed in those things until 150 years ago. Do you really want to say that all the Christians who came before 1830 were like out of the faith? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so when we talk about something like last things, what I find so helpful is to ask a different question. Not, is this a salvation issue, but ask the question, what have Christians historically believed about this? What is in the creeds? What do we find in the first 300 years of the church that the church believed about this issue? So to apply that to last things, well, they believed in the second coming. They believed in a future judgment, a separation of those who are in Christ and in Adam, and an eternal state of heaven and hell. Hell being separation from God, heaven being intimate relationship with God. These were the kind of the big ideas that the church historically believed. So asking the question, what did the church historically believe in the first 300 years, especially putting a spotlight on that? That to me provides a helpful lens to identify what the key issues are. So when I look at something like the mark of the beast, the 7-year tribulation, the rapture, if these ideas don't show up until 150 years ago, I'm not going to go around calling them core beliefs. They're distinctly American ideas that arise in American theology in the mid 1800s. That's where those beliefs come from, to be differentiated from the second coming, the judgment, and the eternal state. Those are the great beliefs of the historic Christian church. So it's a little more complicated than just asking the question, is this a salvation issue? To me, a better question to ask is, what has the church historically believed about this issue? So that gets us to the issue of hell.
Yeah.
That has been a historic Christian belief from the beginning.